Welcome to Almost Heaven, Always Us. I'm Corey.
I'm Kelsey, and today you have a ghost story for us.
That's right. And if you're a big West Virginia folklore fan, you're probably familiar with this story already, possibly. We're talking the Greenbrier Ghost.
Wow, Greenbrier.
Have you heard of the Greenbrier Ghost?
Years ago. I don't really remember the story, so I'm excited to hear it again, because I love ghost stories, and West Virginia folklore in particular.
Okay. Well, this mixes a little bit of both. This is a true story. This all these things happened, but there's an element to it that may or may not have happened. That's up to you to decide as you listen to it. See if it sounds too far out for you or not. But this is the story as it happened. I went through and read a whole different source. I'm familiar with the story anyway for a long time. I think I first heard it, it's probably been 12 years ago or so when I first read this story. And then I've done a lot of research since, read a few articles. I read another one this time, though, that went on a deeper dive, so I'm really excited. This was written pretty close to the time. So the original story takes place in 1897, but this account that I read today took place in 1910. So this was about 13, 15 years later. And it was written by one of the few witnesses, and one of the only few witnesses that were still alive, even though it only been like 15 years.
That's weird.
And so it was a lot of firsthand knowledge that I hadn't seen previously. So I'm really excited to share the story with you today.
Cool.
Got a lot more details. I may not get everything 100% right because I'm going to go off memory as best as I can, but I'm going to try to give it to you right. And if somebody finds something wrong with it, that's okay. You can let us know. Hey, maybe you want to research it yourself and get some details. But so here's the story, how it goes. I'm going to try to pronounce this name. I know I'm going to butcher it, and I'm only going to say it one time because he usually went by a nickname anyway, probably because everyone had the same trouble. But our story takes place almost 130 years ago in 1897. And the first guy that comes on the scene, his name is Euremus, I'm thinking. Erasmus, Euremus. Anyway, that's the only time I have to say it, because when he moved into town, so he's originally from Pocahontas County, or at least his story originally started in Pocahontas County, but at this point he's moving into Greenbrier County, and he's changing his name to Edward. Oh. So we don't have to worry about Euremus anymore.
So how close are Pocahontas and Greenbrier County, do you know?
I think in 1897 it was far enough where he was looking for a fresh start, we'll put it that way. He was leaving Pocahontas County behind, moving to Greenbrier County, kind of changing his name to Edward. New vibes, new town, new people, trying to restart his story a little bit.
Interesting.
Okay, but he would be known as, and this is what people who know the story probably know him as, Trout. His name was Trout Shue. So Euremus Shue, then Edward Shue, but ultimately Trout is what he was known as, Trout Shue. So I'm going to call him Trout from now on. Okay. But anyway, Trout doesn't sound as nice as Edward when you're trying to be a handsome gentleman, which is what he was described as. So he comes into town because he's young and he's looking for love. So he's a handsome gentleman, so he's changing his name to Edward. He's a tall, dark-haired, nice eyes, strong. He's a blacksmith, strong man, you know. So he's what the ladies are swooning for when he comes into town. And it doesn't take him long to start courting a beautiful young lady there named Zona Heaster. These are names that you don't name your kids anymore. Euremus, Zona, things like that. Trout. So Zona, she's a young lady, and she's a beautiful young lady, and it's basically love at first sight. These two fall for each other very quickly. So he becomes the town blacksmith, and he starts courting her. They date for a few months, and that's it. A few months, and they're getting married. So here they are, they're getting married. The thing is, though, Zona's mother, she's not really keen on the relationship. She doesn't really know a lot of the backstory. And there's some interesting backstory on Edward, or Trout, that he didn't tell anybody what he was leaving behind in Pocahontas County. But anyway, the mother, Mary J. Heaster, she's the main character in this story, one of the main characters. She doesn't know Trout's background. She just gets a bad vibe from him. And I think that things move so quickly that she was a little hesitant, you know. She didn't want her daughter marrying this guy she only knew for 2 months. They kind of get married without her permission. You know, she never even visited their house after they got married.
Oh my gosh.
She never been there. She's just letting them do their own thing. Yeah. So she's kind of cut off a little bit, from them, but they're happy. and they're going through the honeymoon phase, and it's a true love story, and that's how it ends. They live happily ever after.
Oh my gosh,
a great story,
that
right?
is so good. You don't hear those very often.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's not what happened. So Zona, she gets sick pretty early on, and they don't really know what's wrong, just kind of this illness. And they have Dr. Knapp. He's a local doctor. He's a kind gentleman, an older gentleman, probably would be retired, but you know, back then he was probably just going to work until he died. And I think that's what he ultimately ended up doing. He kind of been coming over a lot, trying to take care of her, and she starts to perk back up. Things are going good. She kind of beats whatever this illness is. You know, maybe some kind of unknown flu or something. But anyway, she's starting to get better. She's on the mend, and life is good. Then one day, Trout goes to work at the blacksmith shop. So where he's working at the blacksmith shop, it's not super far from their home, but it would be far enough to where he wouldn't just pop in every little bit and check on her.
Yeah.
But it was close enough to where he could send other people to check on her.
Okay.
Maybe take them like a young boy perhaps could walk over and check on her and come back in probably like 30 minutes or so.
Okay.
So there happened to be a young boy, that one of their closest neighbors, a neighbor to the blacksmith shop. There was a young boy there by the name of Andy. He lived with his mom, but they called her Aunt Martha.
Okay.
The whole town called her Aunt Martha. Okay. She's everybody's aunt. Aunt Martha and her boy Andy Jones. He's about 11 years old, and he's the witness I was talking about later.
Oh.
Right? He walks over from the blacksmith shop, and he says, "Hey, Andy, can you go over to my house? Just get a list of things my wife needs from town," things like that. Well, Aunt Martha says, "Yeah, he'd love to, but he has a couple tasks I need him to finish here first." Trout didn't seem too happy about it. He's like, all right. Well, we'll get to it later. So he goes back and works a little bit, comes back over a little bit later. "Hey, Andy, go on over there and check on her. I want to see what she needs from town." Aunt Martha steps in again and says, "Well, Dr. Knapp, the doctor I was telling you about, the good doctor, he's in the area too.
Yeah.
Andy he needs to run these things over to Dr. Knapp real quick. Dr. Knapp already asked us to do it." All right. Anyway, so it takes him 4 tries of Trout coming over and asking Andy to go. And finally, Andy has the rest of his stuff done, and he's ready to go go over to see if Zona needs anything. He's a hard-working boy. So he goes over to the house, and he says in his reports later on, when he talks about 15 years later, he just had this feeling when he's approaching the house, something feels off. He can kind of feel like his goosebumps on his arm. Like something's not right. He said the air kind of changed. Something's wrong here.
Ew.
He goes inside and he sees blood on the floor.
Ew.
And he finds Zona on the floor at the bottom of the steps, as if she had fallen down the steps.
But there was like blood before the steps.
There's blood. And she's laying there and she's dead. And he says her eyes are wide open and staring at him. And he's only 11 years old. He's never seen a dead body before. But he said he had enough sense about him that he reached down and kind of to shake her and say, like, "Are you okay?" And at that point, he could tell she was stiff and cold. So she'd been dead for a little while. So he immediately leaves and he runs back to tell his mom. He gets back over there to Aunt Martha. And Trout is with Aunt Martha waiting to hear what Zona needed. So he obviously tells both of them, "Hey, she's dead."
Yeah.
Aunt Martha sends him on to Dr. Knapp. So they're thinking, hey, is there a chance that he can revive her, perhaps, somehow? Maybe she's not really dead. But Andy knows she was. But he goes on. And then meanwhile, Trout goes back home to see for himself. And he walks in and finds Zona dead as well. So eventually, Dr. Knapp and Aunt Martha come back over. And Dr. Knapp's there to see what he can do. But when they go in, it turns out Trout has moved Zona's body. She's no longer at the bottom of the steps. He's carried her up the steps, put her in bed, and dressed her in a new outfit than what she had on. He put her in her wedding dress, which by Andy's accounts was already an outdated outfit. So I think that she wore like an old-fashioned, what would be considered even then in 1897, an old-fashioned dress, not something like that people commonly wear.
So was it her wedding dress? Or
yeah, her wedding dress, but it's like an old-fashioned dress. It's not something that they would commonly wear even in those times. It was already considered old-fashioned, a high-collared dress that kind of comes up to here. And this is important. part of the story. High collar dress.
Okay.
And then he took a piece of fabric, a big thick piece of fabric, and folded it multiple times and tied it into a bow right here on her neck. Said it was up against her chin, the bottom of her chin. So this whole area basically got fabric. And he's kind of holding her head. That's the position he's in when they come in.
Okay.
He's kind of there, and he's sobbing. He's distraught. He's just absolutely sobbing. This was his bride of only 2 months, passed away, and he's just absolutely wrecked. And he asked the good doctor, well, the doctor seen what he can do. He says, yeah, she's obviously passed. There's nothing we can do. His next goal was the doctor. He was also the one who determines cause of death in the town. But Trout, being so upset, says, "Doctor, just I don't want you messing with her too much. Can you kind of just stay back and let me grieve here with her? You got the information you need. You see she's dead. And just let me grieve here." Never left her side. Hold her head. The good doctor, he agrees. He said, "Yeah." I have to read the quote because I thought this was an interesting quote. One I don't think we would see these days.
I was just going to say. So he obviously wanted Andy to find her like that, right?
Well, that's up to you to determine. I'm not gonna.
Okay, I don't want to get ahead.
I'm not gonna say, but it sure looks that way, right? He come and ask him 4 times to go.
Yes.
Look, and he was aggravated each time when Andy was unable.
Yeah.
He was like, "Come on,
but then he
go do
moves
it."
her immediately before anyone else.
Before anyone gets there, he wanted someone else to find her. But then he's there before anybody else comes. And he wanted it to be a small boy to find and not like a doctor or a grown-up.
That's really weird.
Here's what Dr. Knapp's quote. He says, "It is an everlasting faint. Her heart has failed." So that's
the cause of death?
An everlasting faint. I never heard that before.
Everlasting faint.
What he would end up writing in his record book was that the initial cause of death was that she died in childbirth. He was saying a miscarriage.
Okay.
So she was not even known pregnant or anything.
Yeah.
Like this would have been like an early miscarriage.
Yeah. So that's explaining the blood.
He's saying that is the cause of death, is what he ends up writing in the medical records in Lewisburg.
Okay.
So that's all taking place in Greenbrier County. That's why I wear my 4-H shirt, by the way, because of the state fair. But that's much happier times. We're talking some dark stuff here.
Okay. But there was like no evidence of any childbirth, right?
No.
That's so weird that he would claim
And as the proceedings would continue on with the funeral, Trout, being the good husband that he was, he took care of everything. He took care of doing her hair, makeup. He never left her side for a moment. He would not let any other family members get too close. He was very protective of the corpse. He always was up by the head. He had stuffed 2 pieces of fabric on both sides of her head in the casket there to support her head. And he grieved the whole time. He was just a mess, crying. Anybody that would get too close, he would just sob, "Give me space." At the funeral. Even her own mother, who I mentioned earlier, Mary. And so they buried her. And this all went pretty quick, fairly quickly, between the time of death and her burial. All happened pretty quick. That was it. I mean, that's cause of death, miscarriage, tragic accident. Now, before I continue on, I just want to give you a little bit of a backstory behind Trout from Pocahontas County.
Okay.
So this was actually his 3rd wife. His first wife, he had a child with, and he abandoned them.
Oh.
His second wife died tragically in a freak accident where he dropped a brick on her head while they were doing construction. And he was not punished because it was a freak accident. He accidentally dropped a brick on her head and killed her. This was his 3rd marriage, which nobody knew. They think that he's a nice, fresh young man, inexperienced, but he's been married. This is his 3rd marriage. So.
Oh my God.
Anyway, it didn't last very long. I guess none of them really did, but this one in particular.
What would make him want to like kill them though? Like even if
I didn't say he killed anybody.
Oh.
I'm not making any accusations here, but this is what happened.
Okay.
And Mary, her mother, it didn't sit well with her. She said she didn't really know what happened, but she didn't accept the story that was given, but she didn't know what happened. So in her testimonies, she says that she prayed consistently, nonstop, from the time her daughter died until some events later occur. She prayed constantly for the Lord to reveal what happened. That's what she kept praying. She said, "I just want to know what happened." She prayed and prayed and prayed. So one night, she gets ready for bed, and this is 1800s. You don't have to worry about TV or cell phones or distractions like that. She's getting ready to go to lay down. She lays down. She's getting ready to go to sleep, and she looks up and sees a figure in her room of, looks like a person. So it spooks her. She jumps up. Who's in my room? It startles her. But a mother always recognizes their child.
Yeah.
So she recognizes this figure to be Zona visiting her from the dead. So she reaches out to touch her to see if she's real. And whenever she goes to touch her, she's gone.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Oh.
She's gone. She says, okay, well, she's grieving, and grief can play tricks on you. It's late at night. She's probably not sleeping very well. So who knows, could have been anything. So she kind of just says, whatever. But she continues to pray. She gets the idea in her head. She says, what if that was my daughter? And she's a religious lady. She says, what if the Lord sent her? And she continues to pray, but now she prays. She says, Lord, send her again so I can ask her what happened. So that's what she continues to pray. Well, the next night, Zona comes back again. This time she don't touch her. She just makes conversation.
Yeah.
Like, is that you, Zona? Is that you?
Oh my gosh, I don't know.
Your daughter?
I'm so
and
scared.
she says, she finds out, yeah. She's like, it's me, Mom.
Ew.
She said all she wanted to know was what happened. That's what she wants to know. Well, her daughter told her a couple other things, some other details, not really about her death, some things she kind of even forgot, she just says. That second visit. She didn't really tell her anything. But she does do something weird. She turns her head around like an owl. Basically signifying that her neck is no longer solid. And then she leaves and doesn't tell her anymore. The third visit, she comes back. Zona visits her in the middle of the night again. And she says, can you tell me more details about your death?
Yeah.
And she ends up telling her a story, Zona does. She says that she prepared dinner for Trout that day, or lunch, and he had come home from lunch, is what the ghost Zona is telling her.
Okay.
And he come home for lunch, and she prepared a big lunch, she says, but she didn't have any meat.
Okay.
So she said she had like bread and a lot of sides, but no meat.
Okay.
And he was known to have a temper previously in his prior life in Pocahontas County.
It seems.
And so she said his temper flared up, and he's like, where's my meat? You really didn't make me any meat? And he's mad about it. And that's kind of all she says. Mary continues to pray, and she's visited a fourth and final time. This is her last visit. And she says his anger got the best of him. So I don't think he premeditated or anything. He just, in that moment, he was mad. He jumped up and he took his hands around both sides of her head, and he gave her a good, out of anger, no meat. And down she goes. It broke her neck and killed her.
Oh my gosh.
This is what Zona Ghost is telling Mary.
Yeah.
Mary goes to talk to Trout herself, but she doesn't tell him about the visits and anything. She just wants to know the story, kind of like from his point of view, what happened that day. She's convinced at this point that it's him.
Yeah.
So she starts telling. She doesn't really know what to do with the information. She's like, nobody's really going to believe me. It's a ghost story. But she starts telling people, well, news like that travels like wildfire. So they said not only the area, but basically the whole state.
Yeah.
Started hearing these stories.
Yeah.
They started going out like crazy, like everyone's hearing these stories.
Yeah.
But everybody's like, this lady's crazy. They're probably not as cruel. Maybe they're like, she's grieving, she's imagining this stuff. So it gets to the prosecuting attorney word, and he kind of dismisses it as nonsense.
Yeah.
So she ends up going to her brother-in-law, Mary's brother-in-law, which would have been Zona's uncle. And she tells him, and she says, what do I do? So he goes and visits Trout and kind of does the same thing, talks to him. He talks to Andy, little Andy. Yeah. And he pieces it together a little bit, and now he's convinced, and he thinks that Mary's telling the truth. So he goes and visits the prosecuting attorney, and his name is John Preston. He's an important character. Okay. John says, yeah, I've heard the stories. Everybody's heard the stories. Of course I have. Well, what do you think of it? Yeah. The brother-in-law asked him. Yeah, she's a grieving lady. It's obviously not true. He brings Mary with him the three of them sit down for a conversation that lasts about 3 hours.
Is Andy in this conversation?
No, not yet.
Okay.
This is Mary, her brother-in-law, and John, the prosecuting attorney.
Okay.
After 3 hours, she has John convinced. He says, okay, I'm starting to believe you. Not necessarily the ghost part, but he's starting to believe that Trout may have murdered Zona.
Yeah.
He's still not a believer in the ghost part, but he says, I'm a little bit suspicious myself. So he goes and visits Dr. Knapp and asks him, because Dr. Knapp is the one who recorded her cause of death. And he says, how confident are you in that? And Dr. Knapp says, not really. I'm not really that confident in it.
Yeah.
And, and it describes him even as a nice older gentleman. And he's like, I didn't really get to look at her that well. He was kind of, he didn't really want me to look at her. He's kind of like, give me space. He's like, I'm not confident, but that was my first impression, that maybe she died from miscarriage, but I can't say that I'm confident in that answer. So John says, okay. And he goes to Aunt Martha and talks with Andy and gets his story. At this point, he's pretty convinced, and he goes and talks to Trout. At this point, he is convinced that Trout is the murderer, has murdered his wife. And he's got a couple other witnesses, and no one's seen anybody else that day around the house, only Trout and Andy, who found the body. And obviously, Andy would not be strong enough at 11 years old to strangle Zona, and had no motive to.
Yeah.
And at this point, they don't know. Well, we don't even know if she strangled. That's just what the ghost said. So he decides they're going to dig up the body and they're going to look at it one more time. And he convinces them by saying, even if we're wrong, it will give this mother peace, because she believes her daughter's come back and told her she choked. So if we dig her up and we find that she wasn't, then it'll give her peace to know that she wasn't.
Yeah.
The people of Greenbrier County had never heard of anything like that before. They thought that was really disrespectful to dig up a body. So he even had, as a prosecuting attorney, had to get the sheriff involved and threaten to arrest people who were, against it. First, they go to Trout.
Yeah.
The sheriff and John, the attorney. They said, we're going to dig her up. Well, he obviously says, no.
He's probably losing his mind at that point.
You can't do that. He even invokes God, that's against God to dig somebody up. You can't do that. You wouldn't find anything anyway. There's nothing to find. Like, this is crazy. Let her rest in peace. And they said, well, we're going to with or without you. And he says, well, if you're going to do it, it's going to be with me. He wants to be there. So they take him. So he's there, and even in the examination, he sits very close, right outside the examination room on a bench. Yeah. And
probably panicking.
Had a knife, they said, and he's like carving wood like for 3 days, like fidgeting, kind of fidgeting, kind of nervous. And it takes 3 days. They start. It's Dr. Knapp again, but this time he's got a good look. And he's taking his time. He's taking 3 days. He looks for poison first. He doesn't find anything. He doesn't. He's kind of working his way up the body. He's kind of starting at the feet up, and he's not finding anything. On the third day, which I'm confused by this. Like, I don't know why he didn't immediately start at the neck. Yeah. So he must have not believed Mary's story at all. Yeah, I'm guessing. That's strange. But by the time he gets to the neck, sure enough, he ends up finding her windpipe crushed and her neck bones broken. Yeah. And he determines that this had to have been done by strangling. Yeah. And that this couldn't have been a suicide, because she would not be strong enough to do it herself. This had to be somebody with big, strong hands. Yeah. Who fits the bill. Yeah, and obviously.
That could have been over on day one if he would have just started with her neck.
They go to arrest Trout. Well, he maintains his innocence the whole time. No. I didn't do anything. And they have some evidence there, but it's still not great evidence. They don't have any murder weapon because it was his bare hands.
It's been so long.
It's all circumstantial evidence. Nobody saw it happen. The best testimony they have is from a ghost, which no one's ever used a ghost's testimony before. John, the prosecuting attorney, he says, I admit it's all circumstantial evidence, but it's really good. It's about the best circumstantial evidence you could have. So I think we have a case here. I think we can get him. That's their plan. They plan on going to court, and they give all their circumstantial evidence. So if they wanted to use Mary and let her use a testimony, it wouldn't have mattered anyway. Even if it wasn't a ghost but a real person, because it would be considered hearsay.
Yeah.
It wouldn't really count anyway, even if it was an alive, regular person telling her the story.
Yeah.
The prosecution, they basically said, we don't want to do anything with Mary and the ghost story. Like, that can only hurt our case. It's not going to help us. So we're not going to use that. Well, the court filled up because everyone knew this story.
Yeah.
Everybody. So everyone's interested.
Yeah.
Everybody's there. There's newspapers there reporting. The newspapers are printing off whole sections of the case in the newspaper, like quotes back and forth. Usually never. That's a really rare thing for them to do, like whole question answers on the newspaper.
Yeah.
Transcribing it and putting it in the news, because everybody wants to know what's going on with this case. It's a crazy case. Well, the defense for Trout, they think they're being clever. They said, I think we have a way to get you off. We can get Mary on stand and have her tell her crazy ghost story.
Yeah.
And everybody will say, this lady's crazy. And then they'll say, and that's the only reason you all even dug up the body and all that was because this crazy lady. And you'll be free. That was not a good move. That ended up backfiring big time, because Mary goes up and tells her story, and the whole courthouse is silent, even though it's completely filled, and everybody's face is turning white, and everybody's goosebumps on their arms. And she's passionate, and she talks about, when it's your own kid. And what I wanted to share with you, so this is what the newspaper printed. This is her exact quote here I have. And I'm just going to read it so you can decide for yourself what you think. Okay, so this guy, Rucker, he is the defense attorney.
Okay.
So he's the one asking the questions. And he says, did you, Miss Heaster, did you not have a dream that aroused your suspicions to lead you to have the body exhumed? She says, I had no dream, for I was fully awake, just as I am in this moment. And did you not have a dream or a vision that led you to have the body disinterred? Well, I was not satisfied that my daughter came to her death from natural causes, so I prayed that it might be revealed to me how she died. After about an hour spent in prayer, I turned over, and there stood my daughter. I put my hand out to fill the coffin, but it was not there. She seemed to hesitate to speak to me, and then departed. The next night, after I prayed again, the manner of her death might be shown to me, she appeared and talked more freely, giving me to understand that I should be acquainted with the whole matter. The third night she appeared again and disclosed more to me, and on the fourth night she returned and told me all about the difficulty, how it occurred, and how it was brought about. She had told her, this is her quoting her daughter's ghost, he came that night from the shop and seemed angry. I told him supper was ready, and he began to chide me because I had prepared no meat. I replied there was plenty, bread and butter, applesauce, preserves, and many other things that made a good supper. He flew into a rage, got up, and came toward me. When I raised up, he seized each side of my head with his hands, and by a sudden wrench dislocated my neck. Miss Heaster continued the remainder of her answer. Then my daughter went on to describe the home where she lived. She'd never been there. Mary had never been to their home before. So her daughter's telling her these details.
Oh my God.
That she would not know herself because she's never been to the home. Then my daughter went on to describe the home where she lived and the surroundings in the neighborhood, so it was fixed in my mind as a reality. When I later described it for people living there, they told me they could not have been more accurate themselves.
Oh my God.
She told me I could look back at Aunt Martha Jones in the meadow in a rocky place, that I could look in the cellar behind a loose plank and see her house was a square log house, hewed up right on the square. She said for me to look at the right-hand side of the door as you go in, and in the right-hand corner. I saw the place exactly as she told me, and I saw blood there, as she told me. Now, Miss Heaster, this sad affair was particularly impressed upon your mind, and there was not a moment during your waking hours that you did not dwell upon it? No, sir, and there is not yet either. And this was not a dream founded upon your distressed condition of mind? No, sir, it was not a dream. I was wide awake as I ever was. Then if not a dream or dreams, what would you call it? I prayed to the Lord that she might come back and tell me what happened, and I prayed that she might come herself and tell.
Wow.
Do you think you actually saw your daughter in flesh and blood? Yes, sir, I do. I told them the very dress she was wearing when she was murdered. When she was about to leave the room, she turned her head completely around and looked at me like she wanted me to know all about it. And the next time she returned, she told me all about it. The first time she came, she seemed as if she did not want to tell me as much as afterward. The last night she came, she told me she had done everything she could, and I'm satisfied she did all that too.
Oh my gosh.
Now, Miss Heaster, Don't you know these visions, as you term or describe them, were nothing more or less than 4 dreams founded upon your distress? He's still going for that angle like you're crazy, but he knows he's starting to lose the court, the public court at this point. No, I don't know it. The Lord sent her to tell me. I was the only friend she knew and she could tell and put any confidence in. I was the nearest one to her. Shue gave me a ring he pretended she wanted me to have, but I don't know what dead woman he might have taken it off of. I wanted my daughter's own ring, and he would not let me have it. Miss Heaster, are you positively sure there were not 4 dreams? Yes, sir, they were not dreams. I do not dream when I am wide awake, to be sure, and I know I saw her right there before me. Are you not considerably superstitious? No, sir, I am not. I was never that way before, and I am not now. Do you believe in the scripture? Yes, sir. I have no reason not to believe in them. And do you believe the scripture contains the words of God and his son? Yes, sir, I do. Don't you believe it? He responds, now I would like, if I could, to get you to say that these 4 dreams and not visions or appearances of your daughter in flesh and blood. If I'm going to say that, I'm going to lie. Oh. Then you insist your daughter actually appeared in flesh and blood before you on 4 different occasions? Yes, sir. Did she not have any other conversation with you other than the matter of her death? Yes, sir. Some other little things. Some things I have forgotten, just a few words. I just wanted the particulars about her death, and I got them. When she came to you, did you touch her? Yes, sir. I got up on my elbows and reached out a little further, as I wanted to see if people came in their coffins. I leaned up and made light. I wanted to see if there was a coffin, but there was not. She was just like she was when she left this world. It was just after I'd gone to bed. I wanted her to come and talk to me, and she did. This was before the inquest, and I told my neighbors. They said she was exactly as I told them she was. So she was in the dress she died in, not the one she was buried in, when in the vision. Yeah. Had you ever seen the premises where your daughter lived before these visits? No, sir, I had not, but I found them exactly as she told me they were. And I never laid eyes on her after death. She told me all of this before I knew anything about the building at all. How long was it after you had these interviews with your daughter until you see the buildings? Oh, it must have been a month or more after the examination. You said your daughter told you that down by the fence in a rocky place you would find something. She said for me to look there, but she didn't say I would find anything, just for me to look there. Did she tell you what to look for? No, sir, she did not. I was so glad to see her, I forgot to ask. Did you examine the place since? Yes, sir. We looked at the fence a little, but didn't find anything. After that, Shue goes on and spends an entire day defending himself, and he still maintains his innocence. Says that he didn't do anything, and he pleads with them to believe him. And after that, they go to talk about it, the jury, and they come back 1 hour later, and they found him guilty. Wow. And they recommend life in prison. Oh my gosh. So that's what he got. Yeah. But that's not the end of the story. Oh my the townsfolk now are even more in a frenzy than they were before. Now, after hearing the actual testimony from Mary, they're fired up, and they're not happy with even life in prison. They said, no, he should get what she got. He needs his neck roped. So they said, we're going to hang him. Oh my gosh. So a mob gets together, and they gather up at a farm, and they're ready to go break him out of jail and hang him. Oh my gosh, wouldn't they all go to jail? That's like risking their own freedom. Someone kind of in that group, that friend group, finds out about it, and he goes and tells the sheriff. So him and the sheriff, they go on horseback to try to stop this. They end up seeing them. The mob sees those two drive by. And so they go and get them at gunpoint, the sheriff and the guy, and said, you're going to let us hang him. Oh my gosh. Well, the sheriff is able to talk them down. Yeah. And no one ends up. He even, I think, asked the one man, like, are you willing to die to do this? And the guy said, yeah, I am. But oh my gosh. After the tempers are calmed down and they're able to talk it through, they said, okay, we all agree, no hanging. They end up handing the sheriff the brand new rope they bought. He's able to retrieve. He must have been a good talker, the sheriff. Yeah, really. Probably a good man. And he's able. People. Not only does he get him to call it off, but they hand him the rope. Like, okay, here you go. We won't do it, and he takes the rope. And it ends up 4 of them did spend some jail time for it. Like they ended up getting in trouble. Yeah. For like pointing the gun at him. So they got some punishment. But anyway, so they ended up sending him far away because, well, about as far as you can get from Greenbrier County. They sent him to Moundsville.
Oh my
Penitentiary
gosh, Moundsville.
for life in prison. And this is 1897, and he makes it the rest of his life in there. But the rest of his life is not very long. 3 years later, in 1900, still a young man, he passes away in Moundsville. They had a flu epidemic that come through in 1900 and killed a lot of the Moundsville
And he was
prisoners,
one of
and
them?
he was one of them.
Oh.
And he's buried in an unmarked grave in Moundsville. Now, no
Unmarked.
family came to retrieve the body when they sent the word. Nobody wanted him.
Wow, so he was just a really piece of crap
unmarked
person.
grave.
Wow.
And that is the story.
How did it come about? Did the people find out about his past then? Or like, how did that all come
I don't
up?
think that they found out necessarily until maybe after, I'm thinking. In none of the sources I read did it ever say.
Yeah.
I think that when he came from Pocahontas County and he came over, he kind of was starting over. I don't think anybody really knew about his past. He kind of kept that a secret. And he was never actually in trouble for that anyway, because it was considered an accident.
Yeah.
So he was actually a convicted criminal even. He had spent 2 years in prison prior to moving there for stealing horses. Yeah. He had 2 years for stealing horses.
Wow. Wow, that was a spooky one. I got scared.
Yeah. I tried to get all the details. I might have missed stuff. So if you have any other questions, I might be able to recall some answers.
I don't know. That's just, but like nothing, the whole fence thing. So was she just describing like what the surroundings of her
I think
house
basically,
was like?
yeah.
Just so her mom would know?
Yeah, I think so.
But her mom didn't
I think that was
visit-
supposed to be like proof that the visit actually occurred.
Yeah.
Because she's saying she had no other way of knowing. She never visited the house before. She didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Now she's able to describe it. She was able to describe the dress she was wearing, and she never saw her in that dress. Remember, by the time they got there, even Trout had changed her outfit. And
Yeah.
everything.
I guess I'm just so confused of why he would want Andy to go find her. But then he covered everything up. He tried to cover everything up
Yeah.
so well. Why
Well,
would he risk?
I think that if he was the one that discovered the body,
Yeah. He would take
he
the
thought
fall
that
for
he
it.
would look suspicious, so he wanted someone else. And I think he picked Andy being a kid,
Yeah.
thinking like an adult might look around a little bit more. Like Andy's not going to really look. As soon as he finds out she's dead, he's going to go report. And it's almost
Yeah.
like that's what he wanted. He wanted him to go report to the doctor. Then because everything takes a while, right? Because there's no cars or anything. So he goes to report it. That's when he has time to clean it up. And I think he was trying to stage it as if she fell down the stairs and broke her neck.
Yeah.
But they didn't even go that route because they didn't find the broken neck. So then they went with, maybe she had a miscarriage.
That's just so weird to me. The whole miscarriage. And he's like, yeah, that's probably what it was.
Yeah.
Gosh. And then he wrote that down like officially. Miscarriage, that's how she died. That's so, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's wild to me.
And he had never let anybody get close to the head. He was always protecting the head, always cradling the head until he was able to stuff some garments in to stabilize it because the head was basically not connected. It was loose, so. And he covered it with his crocodile tears.
Wow.
And I'm so upset no one can come near. And that's why he dressed her himself, and he did did the makeup and hair and everything. That was really not typical, especially for like a grieving husband to do that stuff.
Yeah.
But he loved her that much, you know. He's like, no one else can do it but me. Yeah. All the evidence put together surely makes it seem like, I mean, he did it, right? Like, we're all sure of that.
Oh yeah, 100% sure.
But what's odd is, how did the mom know?
So it's like, do you believe in that stuff or you don't?
And obviously, like, the mom couldn't have done it. She's not strong enough. She was elderly too, by the way. I forgot to mention that. So they were kind of trying to say that like she was not only grieving, but like an elderly lady was grieving. Like, so she's crazy.
Yeah.
So she definitely couldn't have had any involvement, you know?
Wow. What do you think?
And
what do you
I
believe?
think interesting. I think he was probably trying to cut her off too. It was one of those situations.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you need to be cut off from your family. I'm your family now. And so I think that's why the mom was like extra grieving. Like, you cut me off, and I know you did something. Like, I'm gonna find out. Well, what I think is interesting about it, I think that the mom maintained that she's a Bible believing lady through the whole thing. She was praying for this.
Yeah. Wow.
She was never into superstition, she said. Never into like witchcraft or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
She was a Bible fearing lady. As was most of the community. at that time. And I think that the defense was kind of going down that angle a little bit. Like he was trying to get her with like, don't you believe in scripture? And she's like, yeah, I do. That's why I was praying the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, she's saying this was from God is what she was saying. Or I think he was trying to paint her as like more like this superstitious or witchcraft type. And he said, do you consider yourself super? She said, no, I don't. Never was and still not.
Yeah.
That's weird.
That is weird.
I don't know. Let me read to you. You know the state markers that are throughout the state, the white ones that talk about
The like plaque
historic
looking things.
things like. Now, I'll put this picture up on the video. But it says Greenbrier Ghost, interred in nearby cemetery of Zona Heaster Shue. Her death in 1897 was presumed natural until her spirit appeared to her mother to describe how she was killed by her husband Edward. Autopsy on the exhumed body verified the apparition's account. Edward, found guilty of murder, was sentenced to the state prison. Only known case in which testimony from ghost helped convict a murderer. That's what the state marker says.
That's
the
pretty
only
cool.
known case. There's never been a ghost give a testimony before that. There's a lot that you can unpack from that. I think my favorite part of the story was that they really didn't want her to testify. Her attorney, John, he was planning, I didn't really tell you this, but he was kind of planning on skimming that part. I'm not going to go into detail because this is going to make people think. He was thinking along the same lines as the defense. Like, people are going to think she's crazy, so I'm just going to kind of skim it and say, yeah, that's how we came about, like, digging her up. But we don't really believe it. We're not going to get in the weeds. But then the defense was like, we'll get her with this. Yeah. And then it totally backfired and turned the whole court of public opinion. They were fired. They were ready to hang him right then. Like, let's get him. So that was a huge miscalculation.
Yeah. What do you think?
So I read Andy's account from his own words. So this was when he was like an adult. He was in his 20s. And his mom had passed. Dr. Knapp had passed. Mary had passed. This is only like 15 years later, but they were all kind of elderly people. Yeah. So he was the only witness in 1910 or whenever that article came out that was still alive. And that's when he gave his first person. So I recommend people to read that. That's wvexplorer.com has that article up that has the first hand. It also has the quotes I read from the court case, the back and forth. That was in the newspaper, though, that they transcribed that. So no, we wouldn't even have that probably on record if not for the newspaper. And that was pretty rare, but they were like, this is so good, we got to write this in the newspaper. Wow. So that whole exchange I read was captured in the newspaper. That's really cool. Yeah. So yeah, that's neat. I just can't imagine like what Andy was thinking. But. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that poor kid.
Poor kid.
That's so traumatizing.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you believe?
Well, I don't believe in ghosts personally. I think it's an interesting story, though.
What do you think, though? Like, it all kind of adds up.
She was obviously right. I guess there was ways for her to be right. I don't think that she was lying. I don't think that she was making this up.
Do you think she was hallucinating it?
I think she definitely bought the story.
Yeah.
She definitely bought it.
Is it something she was making herself believe?
She felt it from her heart that she was telling the truth.
Yeah. And
I agree with that. So I'm not accusing her of any kind of trickery or anything like that. She 100% believed that's what happened. And it ends up what she said happened with the choking and everything. So that part matches. Yeah. Now, could it just be a huge coincidence and she got really lucky?
Yeah. Like the details of the house, the dress she was wearing when she died.
She herself was very religious and was praying for answers. So God works in mysterious ways. Could it be that God revealed to her what had happened? I don't know that he would do that in the form of a ghost, though. Yeah. I don't know. Some people say you can still see her ghost today in that area if you go at the cemetery where she is there.
Let's go.
In that area. But when I go to Lewisburg, I go for the state fair. So, the 4-H. I showed there.
You were a 4-H boy.
I was a 4-H boy. I showed sheep and steers there. I was trying to think if there was anything else. Just sheep and steer. I didn't do the pigs there. No.
Just in Petersburg and Grant County. Tri-County Fair.
But I love the state fair. I always loved it as a kid.
I've only been there, twice?
Yeah, you've been there.
3 times, probably the max. 3 times.
Yeah, so much fun. They got the Greenbrier Resort, of course.
Yeah.
But, what an interesting time.
No, I don't believe in ghosts either. I definitely believe in spirits. And I don't know what you want to call supernatural. I believe in like demonic demons type thing. But yeah, probably not ghosts.
You know what would be the craziest swerve? Is if he actually didn't do it. Like I don't think
That'd
that.
suck.
Well,
And
wouldn't
it
that
was
be
like
like a crazy
actually the
swerve?
mom
And he
who
was
did
like,
it.
I got busted by a ghost and I didn't even do it.
This freaking sucks.
Or if he did do it and he was like, I got busted by a ghost.
Yeah, like,
either way,
man.
either way, getting busted by a ghost is not what you would expect, right?
Yeah, that kind of sucks.
But especially if he didn't do it, that'd be really a bummer. Like they all bought this ghost story.
He seems like a really crappy person. I'm sure he did do it.
I think he definitely did it.
Yeah.
Like, I think
And I'm sure he
all the
killed his second wife
circumstantial
as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, his history didn't do him any favors. That's
Yeah.
for sure. Like how the marker calls him Edward. Mm-hmm. So at least they gave him enough respect to go by his new name that he wanted to go, Edward.
Yeah.
Should have called him Trout though.
Yeah, I wish.
That's what he deserves. It said a towering man of unknown strength
Ew.
presented a striking figure as he forged shoes behind a flaming fire. Because he was a blacksmith.
Dang.
That was supposed to be a good thing. I was like, I hate
Yeah,
like
that
he's
is a
like
good
handsome,
thing. Yeah.
Like strong. He was probably like really strong and muscular and had some strong hands that could choke somebody. if he
Probably
wanted to.
good looking. You know.
That's what they said. That's what all the accounts said. He was
Yeah.
he was really good looking. Yep. Now here's something from his first person, Andy. He said, reaching the steps, I saw a trail of blood. That scared me, but I went to the door and knocked. So he saw blood on the outside, he said.
On the outside.
I went to the door and knocked. No one answered. I tried it, and finding the door unlocked, I walked into the kitchen. The trail of blood continued across the floor to the dining room. So there was blood all over the place. This door, too, was closed. Once more, I knocked. So he sees blood, and he's walking through two doors.
I'd
And
be
they're trying to say-
scared. 11. How old was he? 11?
11. He said he was trying to recall, and he said he thought it was about 11. Mm-hmm. Once more, I knocked, and getting no answer, I walked in. I stumbled over her body. There she was, stretched out on the floor, looking right up at me through wide open eyes. She seemed to be laughing.
Ew.
That's how he remembers her cold face. Like,
Ew, I don't want to hear that. That's scary.
I was frightened, but still able to reach down and shake her. She was stiff and cold. Running from the house, I called across the field to Aunt Martha. Miss Shue is dead. But all the accounts I read said that Aunt Martha was his mom. But in his first person story, he says he called her Aunt Martha too. So I wonder if it was his aunt or mom. I don't know.
Yeah.
Either way, I guess it was his caretaker. But
Yeah. Maybe he was just calling her that because everybody had been calling her
might have
that.
been.
But like, where's all this blood coming from if it was strangulation? If there's that much blood.
Yeah, right.
It's like-
oh, that's true. That's true. That's a good
Yeah.
point.
Like, what is the blood?
Or could it be that Andy's like kind of remembering it more dramatic too because he's a kid?
No. But like any blood at all. Obviously, there was some in the house.
Yeah. Well, I guess if he's dragging the body around, yeah, but you still think that I don't know.
It's very confusing unless she had like damage to her face. Like, did he hit her maybe before?
maybe.
And, like her nose is bleeding, her mouth is bleeding. So I
Yeah.
don't think that you bleed like from your mouth
It's
or
interesting
your
he
nose
saw blood in
after
the dining room though,
strangulation.
because that matches her story
Yeah.
of where it happened.
Yeah,
So if he
Maybe
would have
he
beat
hit
her,
her.
beat her bloody and then dragged her around for a while,
yeah,
but how would you get blood outside though? I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe that's where he was being dramatic.
Maybe because I don't think you would kill
He
her.
couldn't
and
even
take her
remember his
outside,
exact age. So
bring her
this
back
was
in.
years later. So he's trying his best to
Yeah,
recall. But
yeah, that would be hard.
he remembers that face though.
Okay,
Those wide open eyes and that
I don't
smiling
want to
face.
hear about it anymore.
The place they lived at was called Livesay's Mill.
Live Saves Mill.
Livesay is the last name.
Oh, okay.
And the house that Shue lived in with her was Livesay's old house, and it was like like a nice 2-story, like a big house. But he had passed, and he had left that his namesake manor, so like the Livesay Manor, or whatever. So it must have been a decent sized house.
Yeah.
2-story. I was reading, trying to read it. It's a really small town, Livesay, and Livesay's Mill. But there was a mill accident like 3 or 4 years prior to this story, where the mill like exploded and killed 5 people.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, just a few years before this happened. That was a crazy one too. It's a little story. There's not much to it.
Yeah.
But basically, it was a steam powered, and they tried to crank it up beyond its limits. And one guy even told him like, "This thing's gonna blow up. Like, you guys are putting way too much pressure on it.
Oh my gosh.
Hops on his horse to leave. The guy does to go get some water.
Yeah.
And it blows up. Knocks him off his horse, but he was okay.
Oh my gosh.
But he was like, oh, they're all dead. And so he went to get help. But 5 of them died and 2 of them lived.
Oh my gosh.
Said one guy flew like 100 yards, like it sent him like a
That's
football
a huge
field.
Explosion.
Yeah. And so there was just wood, machinery, and like body parts and clothes. They said like everywhere.
Oh my
like,
gosh. What kind of mill?
Lumber mill. Yeah, that's the same town. So this town saw some stuff there.
Yeah.
It wasn't boring at all. Yeah.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah. Yeah. So the mom lived 14 miles away. So and she's praying about it. She said she was 14 miles from the house. And I don't know if that doesn't matter. I'm just saying, like, so she was pretty close by, but yet didn't really have a relation with them at that time. Sleep tight tonight. And don't think about Zona's smiling face.
What the heck is wrong with you?
Yeah, I told you this was a spooky one.
Yeah, it is. But I like hearing spooky stories, even if I get scared for a little bit.
Yeah. So what else?
More.
What else is going on?
Not much. We have new mics, so I hope that the audio. These were way more expensive than our first set, and we have more because we are going to be getting into some interviews this week. I think
so.
Recording some interviews.
Nice.
So we had to get like multiple sets of mics. So these should be better. I hope the audio is better.
Yep.
Yeah.
We went out in the snow today. We had to. We had a basketball game to go to. For
And
our
it
kids.
would not be canceled.
Would not be canceled, and the snow never will end. It
my
appears
gosh,
the
it's
kids
never
are
gonna end.
still on Christmas break, still,
3 weeks in a row.
but I think they're going to go back soon.
I hope. My gosh, how much? If you know a parent, make sure that they're okay. Check on your parents.
All right. Well, if you like that story, you like watching us have conversations about stuff like that we find interesting and West Virginia related, and you want to maybe see some interviews coming up. But if you love West Virginia as much as we do, then share this with your friends. You can watch us on YouTube. You can watch us on Spotify. Find us on Facebook. And if you would give us a follow on all those things, and Instagram.
That'd be amazing.
But sharing, I think, is big. And
Yes,
even word
sharing.
of mouth. Tell your friends.
Yeah, yeah.
If they love West Virginia.
And let us know whether you believe that Zona came back as a ghost to her mother.
See you.
Bye.